5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Happy Easter. Today, tonight, depending when you're listening to this exactly, Christians are celebrating the resurrection of Jesus Christ. But what do we know about the resurrection? What do the gospel accounts tell us about the resurrection? And what does the resurrection matter to our life? That's what we're going to be talking about today on Ignition. Welcome to the show. I'm your host, Dr. Chris Bergwald, and we want to set your faith ablaze so that you might live the adventure that comes from a relationship with Jesus Christ. Before we talk about the resurrection, we want you to know that we love listener feedback. So if you've got questions about today's episode, or if you have ideas for future episodes, please contact us. The easiest way to do so is by email, and the address is ignition at sfcatholic.org. Again, ignition at sfcatholic.org. I'm joined in studio by Renae Kranz and some other people behind the scenes, including a new face, yes. But we won't put his face on camera.
He'll end up somewhere. We'll hear his voice at some point.
At some point.
I have to say, I'm very impressed. You talked more slowly today than usual.
Really?
I could understand every single word you said.
Excuse me?
It was
As
awesome.
opposed to, wow. Yeah, I'm tired, so I'm just a little bit slower.
You slow down when you're
Slow
tired?
down.
I would think it'd be the other way around.
I caffeined up this morning, but now it's starting
Yes, it's afternoon.
Sorry. Can't take too much caffeine. This is just water. You got eyes
okay.
got
I was
big.
like,
it's just ice
sure?
water. Hi, Renae.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm great.
So this is one of those awkward things. We're recording this a little bit early, of course, but people are hearing it, either Holy Saturday night or already in Easter Monday. Yeah. Or if you're watching online, excited to catch Ignition, maybe a little bit early, but so happy Easter. Can we?
Or yes, sure. It's definitely not Easter for us quite yet.
It's not Easter for us quite yet, but it is for our listeners.
Yes.
And it's all about the listeners, Renae, on Ignition.
You're right.
So you and I last year, I checked the archives and we talked about the resurrection last.
We did?
We did. We talked about the resurrection last year.
Sounds like a good topic.
2 years ago, I had Bishop DeGrood on.
Oh.
We talked about the resurrection.
Much better. Much better.
Much better last year, did you say? What?
No, much better to have Bishop DeGrood on.
And so this is, of course, not, for several years, this has been a topic for the show that airs right around Easter, as it will be this time. But what we're going to do today, though, is I wanted to dive into Luke's account of the resurrection a little bit. So we're going to do that in a minute. But we've talked about different aspects of the resurrection before in past episodes on the topic. But to dive into actually the gospel, one of the gospel accounts, is something new. So new life comes with the resurrection. So we're going to do something new this year. But for folks who want to maybe dive into sort of the apologetics, how do we know? We're going to do a little bit on what does it matter. But those are usually kind of my standard questions. You can check the archives of Ignition. Some books, though, that I do want to recommend. Back about over 5 years ago now, I did a couple episodes. At least one with my friend Carl Olson.
You are
fancy. Name drop.
You got a good laugh on Bill with that one.
At least Casey didn't laugh at me yet.
Right.
We'll get there. Carl is the editor of Catholic World Report. He's an adult convert. I've had him on the show many times. Editor of author of many books. One of them, Did Jesus Really Rise from the Dead?
Ooh.
Questions and answers about the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus. Really good book. Dr. Brant Petrie.
I love him. Love those books.
Me too. The Case for Jesus.
I haven't read that one.
So this is the biblical and historical evidence for Christ. So this is about Jesus in general.
Okay.
The biblical historical evidence for Jesus, but he does have a chapter in the resurrection.
Sure.
Highly recommend that. And then for those of you who have a lot of spare time on your hands, if you're listening, not watching.
Well, spare time, or you're very, very interested in this.
Yes.
Which should be all of us, frankly.
Which should be Elvis. So N.T. Wright, who is an Anglican, he's not Catholic, he's an Anglican biblical scholar, but when it comes to Scripture, I mean, he doesn't get everything right. He's not Catholic, but he gets a lot right.
Okay.
There's a lot we can learn. Bishop Barron refers to N.T. Wright a lot. A lot of Catholic scholars have found N.T. Wright to be an excellent Scripture scholar. So if you're maybe new to Scripture scholarship, not quite sure if you want to venture into the views of those who aren't Catholic, maybe not yet. But if you are, even apart from that, what he does in this book, the resurrection of the Son of God, he goes into a lot of the historical evidence about how resurrection was a brand new idea in many ways.
Okay.
You and I never mind. You should go back and listen to our episode last year.
Yes.
It was really good.
I should too.
That's a big fat book, way bigger than the
myself.
other two books combined. If you want to dig into the theology, the apologetics of the resurrection. But I thought we could look at Luke's account. And Luke's account, because this is the account that folks, if they go to the Easter Vigil, will have heard, or maybe if it's also read on Easter Sunday morning, because we're in our 3-year Sunday readings. Year C, which is Luke's account. So I know that you Renae, I don't know if you're familiar with the Bible yourself, but I see that you...
This is the first time I've seen it.
Booked.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you bookmarked the page to make sure you find it, because it's not.
Well, this Bible is not mine, because the one that was in my office was a terrible translation. So Dr. Bergwald lent me one, and it has no tabs on it, so you can't
tabs.
You have to. My mother would be so disappointed in you. Like, you have to have tabs on your Bible.
Not if
What's happening?
Well, I don't want to say anything bad now, because then your mom is gonna be like, Dr. Bergwald. So I can't really zing you here without collateral damage against your mom.
You're right.
And
So we'll just let it go.
So we're just gonna let it go. So in Luke's gospel, and if folks who went to the Easter Vigil or maybe heard Luke's account on Sunday morning, it's from chapter 24, verses 1 through 12. But I do want to just set the stage again by backing up slightly. So at the end of Luke 23, we read about Jesus' death and then his burial, right? Okay. So we're going to back up to the end of chapter 23. And you and I have different translations. So we'll kind of take turns. We're not going to read both accounts all the time, but I'm going to read mine. So I'm reading from the Revised Standard Version, Second Catholic Edition, and I believe yours is the New American Bible. I don't know if it's the Revised Edition or not.
That's usually the one I use. But
right. Yeah. So
it's the USCCB approved. Okay, anyway, continue.
So we are going to look at verse 53 and following. So Joseph of Arimathea had gone to Pilate, asked for the body of Jesus to be taken down. This man went to Pilate, asked for the body of Jesus. Then he took it down and wrapped it in a linen shroud and laid him in a rock-hewn tomb where no one had yet ever been laid. It was the day of preparation, and the Sabbath was beginning. The women who had come with him from Galilee followed and saw the tomb and how his body was laid. Then they returned and prepared spices and ointments. On the Sabbath they rested according to the commandment. But on the first day of the week at early dawn, they went to the tomb, taking the spices which they had prepared. So I did something on purpose there. I went beyond. I went into chapter 24, verse 1, for a specific reason. We don't always, I asked you this. Renae, did Luke write chapter numbers and verse numbers?
No.
Right. So you know that. But the way that we, just because those have been, for good reasons, inserted later in history, and they're standardized now. And most editions of the Bible published these days have the little headings, as I'm sure yours, the one that you're using and the one that I'm using does. The burial of Jesus and then the resurrection of Jesus. We unintentionally give, for lack of a better word, we give that power over reading our reading of the Bible in ways that it's sometimes good just to read it through. So sometimes it can be worth reading or not paying attention to the chapter headings, chapter numbers, verse numbers, chapter headings, just to get a sense. So what I did there in just going right into the beginning of chapter 24 was just to make clear something that's not always obvious. When did Jesus die, Renae?
On Friday, sorry. I'm now going to be fired.
Paging Bishop DeGroote. Friday. And when did he rise again? Focus.
Sunday morning or late Saturday.
Compose yourself.
Sometime after midnight on Saturday. Yes, whatever.
After sundown on Saturday. Okay, yes. So, why didn't they go to the tomb on Saturday?
Because that was the Sabbath for them.
So?
You don't do you don't do any work, first of all.
Yep.
So you don't even do anything with the deceased.
Yes, yes.
Especially.
Wait,
so
if we had the
ding,
ding, ding,
where
ding, ding,
is
ding,
the dinger?
So what we read there, the women who had come with Jesus from Galilee followed Joseph, saw the tomb, how his body was laid. Then they returned back to Jerusalem and prepared spices and ointments. On the Sabbath they rested according to the commandment. But on the first day of the week at early dawn, they went to the tomb, taking the spices which they prepared. So the spices. What if anything, Renae, do we know about the spices?
Ooh. Well, I'm going to guess that there was some myrrh.
Why do you myrrh? Why would
Because
there
I remember
possibly?
it doesn't seem like very long ago we were talking about Christmas,
Right,
and the
it
three
wasn't.
wise men and the Magi.
Right. So
and,
earlier in actually Matthew's gospel,
Mm-hmm.
not Luke's, but Matthew's gospel, we read about the visit of the Magi to the child Jesus,
Mm-hmm.
and of course they bring the gifts of gold, frankincense, and
myrrh.
myrrh. So myrrh was a spice that was used for a variety of purposes, but one of them was for the bodies of the deceased as part of the burial rituals. So these women, they prepared the spices and ointments, we read, on Friday, before sundown on Friday. And then they go back on Sunday morning. One other little detail, where was Jesus put?
In a tomb.
In a tomb. And what do we know about the tomb?
It was hewn out of rock.
Yep. And what else do we know? No.
It was someone else's.
And?
No one had been laid in it yet.
Yes.
Because they did not just necessarily put only one person in a tomb.
Yeah.
Correct?
Right.
Right.
Yep. So nobody had laid it. So some spiritual writers make the beautiful connection there between the beginning and the end of Jesus' earthly existence. You're nodding.
Right. Yes.
Yes, what? What's the connection?
So he was born in a manger, which was actually more of a cave.
No, the beginning of his earthly
Oh, it's the beginning of his
existence.
earthly. Well, that's when he was born, right?
Is that when he first began to exist?
No, he was at his earthly existence.
Well, yeah. Yes. Sorry. Jesus' earthly existence was not in Bethlehem, did not begin in Bethlehem.
Oh, I'm
Okay.
completely lost.
Nazareth.
You're talking about the womb?
Yes.
Okay.
The virginal womb, the virginal tomb.
Oh, okay. Oh, I see.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. So just as Mary's,
Never heard that before.
Yeah, neither had I. To be honest, before
Are you
preparing
making
for
it
this,
up?
no. Father Anthony Gembroni, OP,
Okay.
Biblical scholar, just makes that beautiful connection when you look at Luke's account of the burial of Jesus
Yeah.
and how it beautifully parallels not Luke's the reality that Luke tells us about it. So Luke specifies it. So you see a beautiful parallel. It's a quote unquote, again, virginal tomb. It's never been used before.
Right.
Just as Mary's womb was virginal as well. So just as Jesus was incarnate in the womb of the Blessed Virgin Mary, so is he laid in the virginal tomb, if you will, outside of Nazareth. So just kind of, again,
cool.
those parallels that are.
Do the other gospels also point out that no one had been there before?
Yep. I'm not sure if they all do, but it's not Luke alone that does. So we read, so that's just the setting the stage. They're preparing the ointment, but they take Saturday off, so Friday night till Saturday it's evening,
Sundown or something.
But they wait until Sunday morning, and then the first day of the week at early dawn. So it's still probably kind of early dawn, so probably still kind of dark out. They went to the tomb, taking these spices which they prepared, and they found the stone rolled away from the tomb. But when they went in, they did not find the body. While they were perplexed about this, behold, two men stood by them in dazzling apparel. Okay, so first of all, anything noticeably different in your translation out of curiosity? That went through verse 4.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely phrased. It's all phrased different.
But
they
nothing-
were puzzling over this, and nothing like that makes me question. This is not the bad translation that I had.
Right. So they were puzzling over this. They were perplexed about this. What? Just to be clear here, what's the big deal?
That there were men there? The men that came to visit them?
Nope.
Oh, no, that the stone was rolled away and the body was gone.
Yeah. So obviously they go to the tomb
They expect him to
expecting
be
to
there.
find the body, and there's no body. So this is just the we sort of reading the story, knowing the story for in case our whole lives, looking back. Well, duh, the body's not there, but you put yourself in their shoes. These women, at least some of them, and the names we get a little bit later, they were at the crucifixion.
Right.
They saw Jesus die, dead. They saw him laid in the tomb.
Probably the stone pushed in front of it.
Right. The natural thing for them is to go back a couple days later and expect to find the stone in place.
None of them understood yet that he was going to rise from the dead.
Right.
So they wouldn't expect that.
And we'll get something shortly, which is really interesting to exactly that point. Okay. But yeah, so just to be clear, that's why they're puzzled, because the expectation, the natural expectation would be body's going to be there. Right. Okay. So we're going to talk here about what happens next. But if you're just tuning in, welcome to Ignition. I'm your host, Dr. Chris Bergwald, visiting today with Renae Kranz about Luke's account of the resurrection of Jesus, as we're celebrating the resurrection of Jesus in Easter. So Luke 24 chapter 24 of Luke's Gospel. We are just looking at through verse. We just got through into verse 4. One thing I want to look at here, though, while they were perplexed about this or puzzling over this, behold, two men stood by them in dazzling apparel. So, behold, two men stood by them in dazzling apparel. Behold, two men. That phrase in the original Greek that Luke wrote in is only found in 3 places total. One of them is here.
Oh.
In the entire Bible.
Okay.
So the Greek Testament of the Old Testament from Hebrew, it's only found in 3 places total in the Bible.
I can think of one that maybe isn't there, and I'm not. Was it? There's someone who's fleeing a city or is about to, and 2 men appear to him. Is that one of them? That's the Old Testament, and I don't remember who it was.
Nope, that's not. Nope,
okay.
Nope. They're both actually in in the New Testament.
Okay.
One of them is Luke's account of the Transfiguration, which we heard earlier in Lent. Behold, 2 men appeared with Jesus, Moses and Elijah. And then just a little bit later, it's in Luke's account of the ascension as we find it in Acts, not at the end of his gospel, where 2 men appear. Behold, 2 men appear, it's angels, as he's ascending, after he ascends into heaven, or right before he ascends into heaven.
So do we assume here that these are angels?
So that's the thing, right?
Yeah.
So behold, 2 men, but yes, the belief is that they are. So 2 men appeared in dazzling apparel, and we go on. And as they were frightened and bowed their faces to the ground. So what's going on? Why are they afraid? It's angels, for goodness sake.
They might be scary. I don't know.
Right. So there's dazzling. There's we don't know. These women were not at the Transfiguration. They've probably never experienced anything like this before in their life. And you have these 2 brilliant, quote unquote, men, but creatures that appear to you.
They're not just showing up wearing some diamonds.
No.
This is like beyond that.
This is beyond that. You are correct. So they were frightened, they bowed their faces to the ground, and the men said to them, "Why do you seek the living among the dead? He is not here, but has been risen." Or he is not here, but has risen. So why are you looking for Jesus among the dead? Okay. Now,
because the last time we saw him, he was dead.
Right. So this is again. Well, excuse me, sir. It's because we saw him die.
Yeah.
2 days. So we saw him buried here. So we kind of thought. I mean,
we assumed he was still here.
Right. So we go on in the next verse, continuing these 2 men, these angels, what they're saying to the women. Remember how he told you while he was still in Galilee, that the Son of Man must be delivered into the hands of sinful men and be crucified, and on the 3rd day rise. And they remembered his words. And it goes on from there. So that's through verse 8. So remember how he told you while he was still in Galilee that the Son of Man must be delivered in the hands of sinful men, be crucified, and the third day rise. And they remembered his words. So this is really important. I don't know if we've talked about this before on Ignition, Renae. I think you've heard me talk about it, but Father Richard Veris, who's a priest for the Archdiocese of New York, contributes Magnificat. Got a great little book on Jesus of Israel and looking at in a very simple way the Old Testament roots of Jesus.
Oh, okay.
Father Veris has a line early on that book that has just stuck with me for years. For the Jewish people, for the Jew, the greatest sin is to forget.
Oh.
I oftentimes what the greatest sin is. How would you fill in the blank? And people, all sorts of sins I can think of. But Father Veris said, for the Jewish people, the greatest sin is to forget. Now, obviously, like if I assault you or kill you, that's worse than, oh shoot, what did I have for dinner tonight? Honey, what's on the menu? So what we're talking about here is forgetting. When you read, and this is what when I read Father Veris's point, and then I started paying attention, or it helped me realize how often in the Bible we're told to remember, especially in the Psalms. But how often the Israelites were told, remember things like, remember the marvelous works of the Lord. So the Israelites in the Old Testament and us today are time and time again, when we read the Bible, we're reminded by God, no pun intended, to remember what God has done for us. Remember who God is. Remember what he's done for you. So in this case, remember how he told you. Today in our culture, unfortunately, the idea of waking up or being woke means something very specific.
I didn't see us going here.
Yeah. No, but we, as Christians, we are called to be awake.
Right.
We're called to be alert. We're called to be mindful of what's going around us. We're called in a particular way to always remember what God has done for us. So in this case, these angels tell the women, remember how he told you, and they remembered his words. So this is, I think, to me, what this means, and this happens, well, it's happened many times to me, I'm guessing it's to you as well. So many times I read, there have been times when I read a passage in the Bible that I know I've heard or read probably many times before, but it's like I'm hearing it or reading it for the first time.
Right.
Oh. Or even I don't ever remember reading that. I'm sure I have. I've got a doctorate in theology. I've studied the Bible. Right. How did I miss that? Or I know I've heard it before, but I never saw this aspect of it. That's what happened. So Jesus, we know in Galilee, said, hey guys, to the 12 apostles, but also to the other disciples, including women like these who were following him. The Son of Man, it's me, is going to be go to Jerusalem, be killed, and then rise again. And okay, that sounds great. No idea what that means. Peter, what does that mean? I don't know. Okay, anyway, he says lots of things like that all the time. So, but now on Easter Sunday,
the dots are connected now.
The dots are connecting. So what do they do? So I'm going to let you read your translation right after. So they remember his words, and what do they?
How far do you want me to read?
Just pick up on verse 9, and why don't you just go through verse 12?
Okay. Then they returned from the tomb and announced all these things to the 11 and to all the others. The women were Mary Magdalene, Joanna, and Mary, the mother of James. The others who accompanied them also told this to the apostles.
Actually, stop there. So that's through verse 10.
Okay.
So they pay attention to the sequence as Luke tells it to us. They remember his words, and then what?
Then they returned from the tomb and announced the 11.
So if you imagine that, if you imagine the scene, they don't go in. They don't go in. No. They don't say anything else to these two men, angels. The angels don't say anything to them. They just go. As soon as the dots are connected, they're compelled to go back to the apostles and tell them what they have seen. Now, interestingly here, what they've seen is an empty tomb and then these two men in dazzling white.
Right.
They haven't seen the risen Jesus. They've seen evidence of what we now call the resurrection.
Right.
but they haven't seen. But they've seen something, and then they've been reminded of what they were taught by Jesus over the 2-3 years before, and now the dots have connected, and immediately they're compelled to go and testify, bear witness to, proclaim what they have seen. They're going to bear witness. And so we're told that they told this to the 11 and all the rest. Why not the 12?
Well, there wasn't 12 at the moment.
Judas.
Yes.
And then we're told who it is. It was Mary Magdalene and Joanna and Mary, the mother of James, and the other women with them who told this to the apostles. The significance, just real quick on this, because we're running out of time. The fact that women are the first witnesses of the resurrection is significant. And you nodded. So what's the significance?
Women were not considered reliable testimony.
Right.
At that time.
So in legal purposes,
yeah.
courts, you would never enlist the testimony of a woman because they were unfortunately considered unreliable.
Right. And they did.
Right. And so the fact that
they
Luke
used it,
did sort of indicate, you wouldn't do that if you were making this up. Right. So we go on. So go ahead and then read verse. So the women are reliable witnesses, but verse 11 and 12.
But their story seemed like nonsense, and they did not believe them. But Peter got up and ran to the tomb, bent down, and saw the burial cloths alone. Then he went home, amazed at what had happened.
And my translation says, and he went home wondering at what had happened. So they're like, what are you girls talking about? That's crazy. That doesn't make
that pans out. They didn't think the women's testimony was reliable.
Exactly. But Peter, this is my translation, he rose and ran. So somehow he's wondering, and we know that John went as well. We read that in John's account. So he goes to the tomb and sees the cloths by themselves, and he goes home wondering what happened. Because the women didn't say that either. Right. They didn't say they know what happened. So that's just a little bit about Luke's gospel. Renae, I thought it would be interesting to look at that. So thanks for going along the ride with me.
Yeah, sure, no problem.
So folks, again, dive in if you want to Luke's gospel, but know that Jesus really rose from the dead, and have happy and blessed Easter week, and Easter season. And that will wrap up this episode of Ignition. Again, you can email us, ignition@sfcatholic.org, with any thoughts, ideas for future episodes. And until next time, may God bless you.